Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, double honor to the apostles, GMS. This is Noah Allah coming at you in the video. And this is part 3. I want to say, this is part 3 on the show about dreams and Joseph and history of dreams in ancient Egypt. Because remember, in the book of Genesis, Joseph was able to interpret Pharaoh's dream, but Pharaoh's magicians could not. And it was giving you a little bit of history on dreams and the significance of dreams in ancient Egypt. So this may be the last part. I'm not quite sure. But this may be the last part unless I choose to add a little more information. But this, what I have here, this part is going to basically be the gist of it. Because I want to just stick to the point. I don't want to get too deep into the whole dreams thing and then go into a whole nother topic. I just want to deal with this concept here. So this is back at the website touregypt.net. Alright? And I'm going to continue where I left off. I left off where it said temple. So it says, let's continue on. It says, in order to understand the dream, Egyptians consulted a specialist who could have been a priest or professional dream interpreter, as indicated by a tablet which reads, I interpret dreams, having the God's mandate to do so. Now I couldn't find the tablet, but when I searched different things on the internet, I was able to find different sources that referenced that term. I just couldn't actually find an image of a tablet that said it. But what I am going to focus on, Lord willing, is this word specialist. So it said, in order to understand the dream, Egyptians consulted a specialist. So the Egyptians would consult a specialist in order to understand the dream. Now let's look at that word specialist. Alright, this is on Google. It says specialist. A person who concentrates primarily on a particular subject or activity. A person highly skilled in a specific and restricted field. So a person that's a specialist is a person that's highly skilled. Another word for a specialist would be what? An expert. So we know what it is meant by specialist. Alright, someone that's highly skilled. In this context, someone that's highly skilled in interpreting dreams. So let's go back. So it says, in order to understand a dream, Egyptians consulted a specialist. So let's go a little deeper into who these specialists were called. But first, let's go into Genesis, the 41st chapter. This is Genesis chapter 41, verse 8. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt. It's talking about Pharaoh now. Matter of fact, I'm going to go to verse 7. Okay? In fact, we'll start from 1 again to give y'all a little to give you a little refreshing. Genesis 41:1. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat flesh, and they fed in the meadow. So Pharaoh was in a dream. Pharaoh had a dream, and in a dream, he stood by a river. Okay? And there was 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. So out of the river came cattle, who was well-favored, well-desired, and they were fat-fleshed. In other words, they were plump. Okay? So these weren't skinny cattle. And they started to feed in the meadows. I mean, those 7 represents completion. 7 don't literally have to mean 7. 7 could be 10. That's the term several. Several could mean 8. Several could mean 15. In verse 3 it says, and behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean flesh, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And then you had 7 other kine that came up after them. But these ones they were ill-favored, they weren't desired. And they were lean flesh, they're very lean, very thin, slim. And the ill-favored and lean flesh kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine, so Pharaoh awoke. So then Pharaoh saw the slim, or the skinny, ill-favored, non-desired cattle eat up the cattle that was desired, and that was fat flesh. And then he woke up out of that dream. And he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. So then he saw 7 ears of corn. And these were corn that were of good stock. In other words, these were good crops. Alright? And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. So then you had other corn that sprang up after them. But this particular corn was blasted with the east wind and sprung up after them. Okay? And we got that word blasted. Shadap. It was scorched. They had blight. If you got that word blight, you got that word blight real quick. Blight means a plant disease, typically one caused by fungi such as such as mildews, rust, and smuts. So basically, these ears of corn were sickly. In other words, they was disease ridden. In other words, these were undesirable corn as well. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and 4 ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So then those corn started to devour the others. And then he woke up, and it was a dream. And behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. So he was troubled in the morning when the morning came. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them for Pharaoh. So when Pharaoh woke up in the morning, what did he do? He called for all of the magicians. Called for the magicians of Egypt and the wise men thereof. And he told them this dream that he had. But none of them could interpret the dream. So if he called these magicians and these wise men to interpret a dream, then it's evident that these magicians and these wise men had to have been what? Specialists or experts of what? Interpreting dreams. That's the reason why we just went back. That's something we was reading the Tour Egypt website. What did they say? To understand a dream, they consulted a specialist. So Pharaoh consulted a specialist, or he consulted his magicians. You got a word magician in the Hebrew. It's Khatam. And it says diviner, magician, astrologer, engraver, writer, only in derivative sense of one possessed of occult knowledge. So this is a person who possessed occult knowledge. What does the word occult mean? Occult is from Google. Supernatural, mystical, or magical beliefs, practices, or phenomena. So that word khatam for magicians in the Hebrew is khatam. And it says someone that's a diviner, or someone that is possessed with knowledge of the occult, knowledge of the supernatural, mystical, or magical beliefs, practices, or phenomena. So these were the ones that Pharaoh consulted. In the Hebrew, that word there for magician is khatam, a diviner, magician, astrologer, engraver, writer, only in derivative sense of one possessed of occult knowledge. So let's go a little deep into that. When you type in that word khatam on Google, it'll bring you to this site here, and it's called Balashan Hebrew Language Detective. Khartum and Hartumum. It says, this is from Rita ZVI, right? So this is a person that's writing about these particular Hebrew words. And it says, with the impending partition of Sudan in the news lately, and this is from January 2011, as you can see, it would be interesting if you could address the multiple uses of the Hebrew word Cha-Ra-Ta-Wum. And we'll get to that too when we go to the book of Exodus. In Exodus 7:11, see they have right there too. In Exodus 7:11 and 7:22, it's the word used for the Egyptian magicians. In modern Hebrew, it's used for the prow of a ship or elephant's trunk and a rocket nose cone. And it's also the name of the capital city of Sudan. What, if anything, is the relationship between those? Okay? It says, good question. I've been meaning to write about this for a while. So let's go real quick and go to Exodus. This is Exodus 7:11. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. In other words, they threw their staffs down and it formed into a serpent. In verse 22 it says, and the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. But first let's go to the Hebrew word there for magicians in Exodus 7:11. Ratum, like we read before. And right there also says Charatamya. Because the other one, we'll go back to the website, I'll show you. 7:22 it says, first let's read, it says, and the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them as the Lord had said. So the Egyptians had mimicked that plague as well, turning the water into blood. And when you go to that word magician, it's the same thing. Charatamya, or charatum, or khatam, or khatamya. Alright? So we see that there. Let's go back. But you see here they got it written a little different. It's charatayam. If you pay attention to how the Hebrew is written at the top of your screen, under the time right there. But it says, first of all, khatam, meaning beak, nose, trunk, as well as the borrowed meanings you mentioned, is, as Klein writes, enlarged. So they're referencing different dictionaries and so forth, as you're going to see later on. And you could just research all this. You could just research and backtrack all this on your own. I've done it already. That's why I could bring this out. First of all, khartum, as we read already on Google. When you go back, when you rewind this video and go back to Exodus 7:22 and 7:11, we will see the cha, ra, ta, ya, ma, as it is right here highlighted on your screen. Go right back to it. It's the same way. Or khartum ya. It says khartum ya. If you go up right here on the top of your screen, it's gonna say karatayam. But that's like a Y right there. See, the only thing about it is whatever whatever particular text they use to type this in, it has it looking like that. You brothers know that if you read Hebrew before, based upon whatever text is written, and sometimes the characters may look a little different. You know? Like that's a Ra right there. This right here is a Ra. Let me show you. That right here is a Ra. But it might look like a Da to some people. But if you go back on Exodus 7:11 and 7:22, it says Kara ta maya. Here it says Karata ya ma. First of all, khartum, meaning beak, nose, trunk, as well as the borrowed meanings you mentioned, is, as Klein writes, enlarged from the Hebrew. See? From the Hebrew, kha. Like I said before, the text that they use got looking all messed up. But it says khatam right there, meaning nose, snout. I discussed earlier to the more popular word for nose. The name of the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. Let's go right to the point. It says, what about the Hartumim of Egypt? There are a number of theories. Go scroll down. Get right to the point. Because they got the text written. They got these Hebrew characters written in whatever text they got. And it's not clear to read. The reading isn't that clear, so I'm going to jump right down. It says, in any case, at some point since that was written, there have been such Egyptian inscriptions discovered, for we now find quotes such as in On the Reliability of the Old Testament, which is an actual book, for example. On the Reliability of the Old Testament, this is an actual book. Okay? go back. It says the term for pharaoh scholars or sages is Hartumim, which goes back to Egyptian term Pt.3, best translated expert. That's why I mentioned that word specialist. Goes into the word expert. And often found in the Egyptian Karihab, Haritep, which means lector, priest, and expert. And they were also known as lector priest as well. And not simply chief lector priest as was formerly thought. So now you know in the Hebrew word it says Khartum, which means diviner, astrologer, one possessed with knowledge of the occult. And we also found out that Pharaoh called the scholars Hartumim. It was said it's called Hartumim, which derives from the Egyptian term Haritep, translated experts. So Pharaoh's magicians were experts or specialists. Experts or specialists of what? Interpreting dreams. Now we understand that. Let's go a little deeper now. Because they were also known as lector priests. They were known as masters of secret things. And they were also known as masters of the double house, or masters of the double house of life. Let's get into that real quick. As a matter of fact, it's already been 16 minutes. So I'm gonna hit you with that on a part 4. So it's gonna be one more part, and I'm gonna end it up there. So with that, I'm gonna go close. Hope your brothers understood this particular show, because like I said before, the text that they had the Hebrew characters written in, that was written in Assyrian Hebrew. And you know, sometimes based upon who's writing the Assyrian Hebrew, it's kind of hard to make it out. A Ra may look like a Y, so maybe a little hard to figure it out. So with that, I'm gonna close. Say, praise the How about Shem Shah, double lines, GMS. See you on part 4, which will more than likely be the final part. Shalom.